Welcome back, researchers. I am so incredibly thrilled to welcome you to Module 3 of American Language and Culture, California Dreams and Realities. Can you believe it? It is our final week together in this asynchronous journey, and I just want to take a quick moment to celebrate the amazing classroom community we've built. Over the past 2 weeks, you've all stepped out into your communities, you've looked so closely at the linguistic landscape around you, and you've started reading public spaces like a living, breathing cultural text. This week, we bring it all together. This welcome explainer is designed to set you up for absolute success as we cross that finish line.
Here is our roadmap for the week. We'll start with a welcome to week 3. Next, we're covering California's tech and culture, followed by your digital story portfolio, reflecting on your journey, and finally, a few tips for final success.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1. Welcome to Week 3, Synthesizing Field Data into Action.
So back in week 1, you were basically gathering clues, right? You were snapping photos, taking field notes, and starting to ask some really great questions. Now we're shifting gears from gathering to synthesizing. You are going to pull all of your original observations, your interviews, and your readings into one public-facing digital story. This is where your fieldwork truly becomes action. And that brings us to the driving academic question of this entire module, something I really want you to keep in the back of your mind as you build your final projects. What kind of California do our public signs create? Think about the multilingualism you've observed, the code switching, the symbols. How do these everyday artifacts actually shape community identity? And honestly, more importantly, how can we make that public communication more welcoming and inclusive?
To ground us in where we're heading, our Canvas layout for the week lays it all out. Under the Module 3 overview, we have our core materials. This includes video explorations of the new entrepreneurs, the social network, and the documentary Revolution OS. Below that, you're going to see your course closure checklist, and then your final 3 assignments, the digital story portfolio, your peer review, and your final reflection. It is a highly focused week, and absolutely everything you need is organized right there for you.
Moving right along to Section 2, California's Tech and Culture, from Silicon Valley to Solo Operations. You know, California is so often imagined through these massive, iconic symbols like Hollywood and Silicon Valley, but the reality on the ground is shifting dynamically. Our module materials this week explore the intersection of technology, the economy, and community identity, and they paint a really fascinating picture of modern California. Consider this massive number, 278,000. According to state data reported by KTVU Fox 2, this is the record-breaking number of applications for new businesses in the Golden State during just the first 6 months of 2023 alone. That is well above pre-pandemic levels. So despite all those headlines we see about high-profile tech layoffs, Californians are aggressively claiming their own space in the economy by, well, hiring themselves.
What's wild about this boom is the actual breakdown. The data shows that 4 out of 5 of these new businesses are solo operations, literally people doing it alone. This surge is largely driven by remote work and service rendering firms like consulting or direct-to-consumer functions. It highlights a massive foundational shift toward decentralization and self-reliance in California's culture. Everyday people are redefining their own communities and completely changing how they communicate and operate within them.
And this spirit of grassroots innovation and decentralization, it brings us perfectly to another core material for this week, the documentary Revolution OS. This film tracks the history of the open-source software movement, which is so deeply rooted in Silicon Valley and hacker culture. It tracks the journey starting with Richard Stallman's GNU project back in 1984, to Linus Torvalds creating the Linux kernel in 1991, all the way to massive corporate shifts like Netscape releasing its source code in 1998 and that historic VA Linux IPO in 1999. Ultimately, it's a story of how a loose confederation of programmers built tools to set computer users free entirely outside of traditional corporate hierarchies.
Which brilliantly illustrates the underlying ethos of our week. As Richard Stallman notes in the documentary, the freedom to cooperate with other people is important for having a good society. Whether we're talking about open-source software developers sharing code, or solo entrepreneurs building local networks, or you acting as cultural researchers, analyzing how we communicate in public spaces, it all comes back to how we cooperate, how we share, and how we make our environments more inclusive.
Which brings us to Section 3, your digital story portfolio. This is worth 100 points, and it's due Thursday, August 13th.
This assignment is really where 3 weeks of fieldwork becomes one cohesive, public-facing argument. You are going to build a digital portfolio using Google Slides or Adobe Express. You'll draw from your own original photography and field notes, weave in your community interviews, and connect the whole shebang back to our course readings.
Now to make this completely manageable, we've broken the project down into 3 core steps. Step 1 is what I observed. You'll select 8 to 10 signs from your field notes and analyze the language choice, the code switching, and the symbolism. Step 2 is what I learned. Here, you must include at least one direct quote from your community conversation interview. And step 3 is what I propose. You need to recommend one specific, realistic action to make California's public communication more welcoming, and it has to be grounded directly in your own evidence. This is the ultimate take action step of global competence.
The absolutely crucial point here is meeting the formatting requirements. Make sure you include a 150 to 200 word introduction that clearly states your overall theme. You must apply at least 2 course readings specifically to your science, so please don't just summarize them generally, apply them. Along with your portfolio link, you're going to submit a brief 100 to 150 word process note explaining which field notes entries you drew from and what actually changed in your revision process. And remember, this portfolio is meant to be read by a real public audience, so prioritize clarity and specific vivid detail over flashy decoration. Make your evidence shine.
Next up, Section 4, Reflecting on Your Journey. This is worth 12 points and is due on Friday, August 14th.
Now it's time for a little metacognition, measuring how your own thinking has actually evolved. For this assignment, it's time to close the loop. You are going to pull up your very first Global Competence pre-course reflection from all the way back in week 1. I'm guessing you probably haven't looked at it since you wrote it. This assignment asks you to hold your week 1 self and your week 3 self side by side and articulate exactly what shifted.
It's honestly an incredible exercise. Think about it. 3 weeks ago, you wrote a baseline reflection without ever having looked closely at a public sign. Now, you have a synthesized cultural understanding backed by 8 to 10 analyzed signs and a local, real-world interview. I want you to name a specific sign from your field notes that actively changed your thinking between week 1 and week 3.
For this 400 to 500 word reflection, make sure you directly quote or closely paraphrase your week 1 self. Explain what assumption from that very first week turned out to be wrong, incomplete, or maybe just way more complicated than you expected. You also need to reference at least one specific classmate interaction by name or username from our peer activities that shaped your thinking. I want to highlight just how much we've learned from each other in this community. And again, this is due Friday, August 14th.
And finally, Section 5, Tips for Final Success, Finishing Strong and Keeping Your Data.
We are absolutely in the home stretch, folks. I know asynchronous learning can sometimes feel pretty demanding, but you have done the heavy lifting and I am here to help you finish strong. First, just some highly practical advice. Please read the module instructions fully before you even begin your portfolio. Set aside regular study time this week. If you get stuck or face any technical issues with Adobe Express or Google Slides, ask questions early. Please do not wait until Wednesday night. Keep a close eye on those deadlines. The portfolio is on Thursday, the peer review and final reflection are on Friday. And please, actively participate in that final peer review. Your feedback is invaluable to your classmates. Also, please remember our course closure checklist. B-Courses access eventually expires. Do not let your incredible original fieldwork just disappear into the digital void. Download a local copy of your final digital story portfolio, your field notes, your community conversation audio, and both of your reflections. This is legitimate, publishable fieldwork that you can absolutely use for personal websites, LinkedIn, or even grad school applications. Finally, review your final grades in B-Courses, and please take a few minutes to complete the official course evaluation if you have one. I want to end with a massive, massive congratulations. You spent 3 intensive weeks learning to act as cultural researchers. And you learned to see California in a completely different way. That linguistic landscape literacy, that is a skill you get to keep forever, whether you're traveling to a new city or just walking down the street to your local grocery store. So, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought as we close out the term. The habit you built here definitely doesn't end with this module. What will you keep noticing in the world around you now that you've been trained to truly look? Thank you for an incredible course. Good luck with your portfolios, and I cannot wait to see your final projects.